All right, hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Wanted to do a video here, and normally I say I want to do a real quick video, but this is not going to be a real quick video. This is going to be a long video. So, and guess what? It's going to be an incredibly dry video, unless facts matter to you. If facts don't matter to you, I'm telling you, it's going to be a very boring video. We're going to be talking about laws. We're going to be talking about authorities. We're going to be talking about that kind of stuff. But what I really want to sort of predicate this is so apparently the dude that runs Audit, John something or other, I've got it in the description, uh, made a video and essentially tried to explain. John Lang, there you go. Um, made a video essentially saying that I was wrong. I didn't know what I was talking about. Apparently a retired counterintelligence special agent. I'm sorry, senior counterintelligence special agent doesn't know whether or not he has arrest authority as a senior counterintelligence special agent, and a Second Amendment attorney doesn't understand Second Amendment law in Texas. That's who this guy is. I don't even know where he lives. Um, and yet decided he didn't contact me, and that's kind of the problem. Why didn't you just contact me and say, hey, CJ, I'm thinking about doing this video. Can you send me some stuff so I make sure I put out the right information? By golly, I would have done that. And it's really not that hard. It really is not that hard to figure out the truth here. But even when he's looking at the statute, he gets it wrong. And I'm not talking about uh an interpretation. I'm talking about the law itself. So what I wanted to do was make this video and really go through it. I'm gonna play his video, and I'm gonna just parse it apart piece by piece. I went onto his page. Somebody told me that he had made this video. I went and I listened to it, and I put a video, or I put a comment underneath. I'm like, hey, you might want to get in touch with me before I do my video, because I don't really want to do a video and get into some kind of YouTube war. But you might want to get in touch with me um, before I make a video so that we can kind of fix this, right? And instead, of course, saying, "Oh my gosh, what did I get wrong? What did I do wrong?" Oh no, no, go ahead. You make your video, right? Why? Because he wants the clicks. He doesn't want to lose the views. And that's it. And so we're gonna go through all of that. We're gonna go through his video, and I'm gonna show you exactly why. And look, I don't watch Audit videos. I don't know who he is. I don't know who John is. I just know he made a video about me and didn't contact me. And I'm very easy to find. Very easy to find. Everybody see me? Everybody see me? Somebody says, "Are we waiting for CJ to arrive?" Am I on? What does this mean? Waiting for CJ to arrive. Okay, we're good. Okay, good. So let me bring up his video here.
Enter a man named CJ Grisham.
So first he's talking about I guess some of the deaths in the jail, and really what happened back on January 14th when I went to Tarrant County. By the way, I did not go to Tarrant County in my capacity as an attorney. I went to Tarrant County in my capacity as a friend of somebody who was killed in the Tarrant County jail. And I was there to also protest the conditions in the Tarrant County jail. The fact that over 70 people have died in the last 7, 8 years is appalling, and really it deserves a federal investigation. And so I went there because my friend was killed in the Tarrant County Jail, and everybody knows what happens. I've got the videos on here, um, so I don't need to really go over that. But that's what he had just talked about. Now here's where he starts talking about me, and hopefully you guys can hear this. Let me know if you cannot hear it. I know I've been having issues lately. I might have solved them. We'll see.
CJ is a Texas-based civil rights attorney, a military veteran, and a prominent Second Amendment advocate. He served over 20 years in the Army as a senior counterintelligence special agent.
So right there, he says and admits that um, I served over 20 years as a senior counterintelligence special agent. So he's admitting right then and there what my job title was. Then all you've got to do is do a simple search. It doesn't even require digging into statutes and laws and rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff. It really doesn't.
And even went on combat deployments in both Iraq and Afghanistan. After his service, he became an attorney and the founder of Open Carry Texas, which is an organization that advocates for Second Amendment rights. Obviously, CJ actively practices law and specializes in defending citizens who suffer civil rights violations involving the First or Second Amendment. So CJ was the man for the job. And on January 14th of this year, CJ decided to attend a meeting at the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court. CJ was there to take part in the public comment portion of the meeting, where he intended to read the names of all the people who had passed away recently in the Tarrant County Jail. And like I said before, CJ is a huge Second Amendment advocate, so naturally, he doesn't go anywhere without his firearm. And of course, going to the Commissioner's Court was no exception. CJ entered the building with no issues and was allowed to move around without anyone questioning him, but he was concealed carrying at the time, so it's not like anyone would even know that he was armed. So CJ entered the commissioner's court and sat for several minutes before eventually deciding to go to the restroom. As he was leaving the restroom, CJ ran into Executive Deputy Chief Craig Driscoll.
So far, no issues here. Everything's correct. He's telling things how it went, exactly right. And I have no issues with this so far.
Of the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office. CJ knew Deputy Driscoll from a prior incident that they had had involving pretty similar circumstances, but at the local courthouse. And the two were on cordial terms, according to CJ.
And we were, and I'll tell you what happened. This was actually during Mata's trial, and the Driscoll, the gentleman that he just showed, came up, and while we were waiting, I think we were waiting on the jury at that point. Came up and asked me, "Hey, can you come outside real quick?" I said, "Yeah." He explained that because I had had that sort of issue downstairs, and I dealt with it with the sergeant. Showed my credentials and was allowed to go up. Then, so he wanted to see them. I provided them to him, and apparently everything was good. And then later, things changed, but we made an agreement because there was a discussion about whether or not I think T. Cole had told him some lie about whether or not I was a qualified retired law enforcement officer. T. Cole, by the way, they're not attorneys. They do training for peace officers, which explains to you why peace officers are so untrained, because they're giving bad advice all over the place. T. Cole is one of the biggest problems that law enforcement has in Texas because they themselves are the ones that are creating the training that allows these kind of officers to do the kinds of things that they do. And then, of course, when a guy like Driscoll calls them and they give him bad information, now he's going off of bad information. Um, and so what we did was, because I don't have any desire necessarily to carry into a courtroom. It's not that I just feel like I should be able to carry into a courtroom. My biggest thing is I don't like to keep my gun in my car. I don't think it's very safe. The vast majority of stolen firearms are taken from vehicles, especially unsecured vehicles. And I'll be damned if I'm going to leave my gun in my vehicle, especially if I don't have to. And so we made an agreement that I'd be able to come into the building, but I would keep my gun in the lockbox, so I didn't have to keep it in my car. I mean, after all, I'm not too worried because there are deputies all over the place. I'm usually not on the first floor anyway, and so if something happens, generally there's going to be somebody with a gun around me. Okay, I'd prefer it be me, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But that is what it is. It's just an agreement I made so that we didn't have to fight over the issue. Okay, um, I made the agreement. I surrendered part of my rights just to avoid the fight because I just wasn't interested in the fight. Okay, I personally, I don't think it's right that anybody is treated special just because of what they did for a living. I don't think that me as a retired federal law enforcement officer, as a counterintelligence special agent, that I deserve to have more rights than someone else. If I can carry in a courtroom, anybody should be able to carry into a courtroom. If I can carry into a school, anybody can carry into a school. I just don't believe that government officials should be granted extra rights. The Constitution was designed to limit government, not the people. And yet it's doing the exact opposite. We're limiting the people and we're allowing government to have gun rights that the regular people don't have. So just to tell you a little bit about what my motivation is for all of this.
That was at least until their small talk coming out of the bathroom turned into an interrogation when Deputy Driscoll asked CJ if he was armed. CJ told the deputy that he was armed, like he always is, and then the deputy informed CJ that he wasn't going to be going back into the meeting with his firearm. Well, needless to say, CJ took exception to that, and well, that's where today's video begins. So let's just dive right in.
26C credentials. Read the fucking law, chief.
You want to go to jail for disorderly conduct?
Why, for saying fuck?
Quiet down.
For saying fuck?
In a public
That's a
place?
what? You seriously wouldn't take a First Amendment attorney to jail for saying fuck?
If you disrupt, if in front of the, not.
No,
not-
you are violating my rights by not letting me
You're
go
not
back in
going
here.
there again. You're not going there again.
Under what law?
You're not a Texas peace officer.
I don't have to be a
You're not
Texas peace
retired-
officer.
You're not an honorary retired peace officer.
Qualified DOD law enforcement officer.
You notice how I'm trying to show him my credentials and he keeps moving out of the way, by the way. Like I'm literally moving to show him and he circles around me like we're in a cage, like an MMA cage or something. He just does not want to look at this document.
Right there.
You work CID.
I was counterintelligence. I was not an analyst. I was a counterintelligence
He literally calls me an analyst. An analyst.
special agent.
CJ's right.
What is this?
He went over this on the internet.
You generate your own little badge, that's fine.
CJ's right.
11666 is my badge
You're not
number.
you're not going there.
T-Cole doesn't get to decide what federal agent. No, they do not, because I don't have to fall under T-Cole licensing.
So you're falling under Bear County, doing the same thing too? Bear County, the same thing to the
Is
ham.
this fraud? Is this a fake license? Shh.
Let me ask you.
No, don't shush me. Is this a fake
Let me ask you a
license?
question. Why didn't you carry your gun
free
into the
speech.
courthouse?
I did.
No, you weren't. You were
Yes.
making a lot.
Well, I've seen this before.
I carried it
I've seen it
into the
before.
courthouse until your people changed the rules.
So why didn't you carry it in? Why didn't you go past us?
Because I made an agreement with.
That's the problem. You know, there was a comment up here earlier that says don't make agreements with the devil. And this is what happens when you do. When you make an agreement, when you come to you try to meet them halfway, then they try to take more and more. And so this is just more evidence and more proof that you should never give an inch. And I gave an inch and I don't do that anymore. And so yeah, this is why you don't do it, because they just find a reason to undermine it.
You guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won't do that agreement anymore then.
Okay.
I carry in every
Then you'll
courthouse
suffer
in the
consequences.
state.
You'll face the consequences.
And you will too when I sue your ass, because you
Okay.
know exactly what the fucking law is, and it doesn't say T-Cole. It says 926C, 18 USC
Debating
1926C.
right here.
You don't have to.
Now, the thing that I did do wrong there, because I said it right the first time, but then when I repeated it, I said 1926C. It's 926C, okay? 18 United States Code, 926C, big C, all right?
Excuse me. Stop touching. Don't fucking touch me.
Stop doing that shit.
Excuse me.
And this is where everything goes off the rails, because at this point, he's pushing me and grabbing me for no reason whatsoever. No laws are being broken. They just don't like the fact that now all these people are filming their tyranny.
Back the fuck up. Don't tell me to relax when you're assaulted. Get your fucking hands off me. You're assaulted. Don't tell me to relax.
Man, get your hands off me, man! Stop.
And see, they're actually doing this to everybody. They're starting to push everybody around. So now the police, this is just a normal discussion. And you notice here, Driscoll's back there just watching all of his officers beat everybody and assault everybody by pushing them around. It was a simple discussion. And then they started pushing everyone and me. And that's why everybody started getting upset, because the officers started escalating and they became violent.
Fucking touching me! You bumping into me!
But I will serve.
Hey, what's your name?
Don't tell me.
What's your name?
Touching me.
You bump into me. I didn't touch you or touch anybody else. You bumped into me.
As soon as you get my stuff out of there, I'll leave. And I want everyone's name and badge number, Chief. Where you at? Everyone that's right here, I want everyone's name and badge number. So don't fucking touch me either. Your guys are. I don't give a fuck. Sheriff.
I don't care, Sheriff.
See, and now Driscoll's over here getting on to Mata because he said, "Don't fucking touch me."
Who's offended? Who's offended? You can't be.
All right, let's pause here for a second because this guy is kind of important to the story. This is Manuel Mata, and he's not just some random guy who happened to be at the commissioner's court that day. Manuel is somewhat of an auditor slash citizen journalist himself, and he mostly covers things that take place around the Fort Worth area of Texas. And he's had a few run-ins of his own with various law enforcement agencies. Manuel has been represented in court by CJ in the past, so it's safe to say that they know each other quite well. Now, you're about to see Manuel get arrested, and we will come back to that later because it's difficult to tell what actually happens to him from this angle. But luckily, he was recording the interaction as well, and it shows exactly why he was arrested. We'll take a look at his angle of the events in a moment, but just keep him in mind for now.
For what? Who's offended? Oh, shit. God damn, man. What the fuck are y'all doing?
How they just smashed his head into the wall. You can actually hear it in the video. You can hear his head getting thunked against the wall. He's not being violent at all, but they just slammed him against the wall because they assaulted him. He says, "Don't fucking touch me." Now all of a sudden they're assaulting him even more.
Resisting. I'm not, asshole. I'm not. Who's offended? Who's offended? Y'all can't be offended by what I just said.
Is somebody being arrested for free speech here?
Yeah, man. Y'all fucking insulting me, motherfuckers.
What's your name?
Hey, go get my shit, CJ.
What's your name?
Somebody
Hey,
got
go get on my stuff.
somebody got his cell phone.
Just do that for me.
Somebody got his cell phone.
Oh, let's go.
You lost your qualified immunity.
What is he under arrest for?
They're getting me for UCW, even though I have a license to carry that I can carry. Excuse me, I'm not even tensing up, motherfucker. What are you doing? Don't sit here and try and play it for the camera like I'm tensing up. I'm going legally. Yeah, it's mine. You're telling me to relax while you're falsely arresting me? Have you read 4615?
Just go back, guys, please.
Sheriff, I've got my law enforcement credentials in my pocket, Sheriff. Don't do this. Sheriff, in my back pocket. I just showed it to the chief. Well, then check it right now and get me out of these cuffs. And then read Penal Code 4615. You can't even arrest me for unlawful carry because it doesn't apply to me. 4615 is non-applicability.
All right, so now we're at the most interesting part of this interaction that
All right, here's where we get into it. Here's where John thinks he knows everything, and he doesn't do even a modicum of homework. He doesn't. I don't know what he does because he's obviously looking at the law, and I don't know if those glasses aren't the right prescription. I just don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to show you what he's apparently looking at, and yet you're going to see what I see, what the rest of the world sees, that somehow John misses.
it warrants a little bit of legal investigation, if you will. We're still going to come back to Manuel's arrest, so don't forget about him, but let's take a look at what CJ is saying here. And first, let's establish CJ's claims. He says that Texas Penal Code 4615 exempts him from the firearm prohibitions that typically apply to Texas citizens because he is a retired DoD counterintelligence special agent.
And actually, if you listened, I made two claims. One was the fact that I'm retired law enforcement, but also that I'm licensed to carry. Okay, I have an LTC in Texas. That's going to come into play. All right, if you listen to the video, which apparently John didn't, I also talk about the fact that I'm licensed to carry. Now, my Leosa is not my license to carry. That's just my law enforcement credentials. But I have a license to carry. So I made two claims in that video, but he's only talking about one. He completely skipped one of them.
He also cites subsection C of 18 U.S. Code 926 to support his claim.
I'm actually not citing subsection C. I'm citing 926C. There's 926, 18 USC 926, and there's 18 USC 926C. It's a big C. It's like an extra section. It's just like under our penal code and some of our codes, we've got like 12, and then we've got 12A. It's a way that if they don't have the right numbers, they fit it in there. Okay. So it's 926C. It's not a subsection of 926. It's 926C.
which is a federal law we'll talk about in a minute. Now, I don't want to bog you down too much with the legal analysis, but this is an important critique because CJ might be operating on some shaky legal ground here.
Here's a guy that does a YouTube channel telling an attorney and a former counterintelligence special agent that he's operating on shaky legal ground. This is going to get good, folks.
And I don't want to turn the hero of this story into a villain or anything, but let's just let the law speak for itself. So the main law that CJ is citing is Penal Code 4615, which basically just lays out who is exempt from the state's gun regulations. This code does have a provision for special investigators, but it refers to Article 2A002.
See, you notice how it says 2A002, not subsection A of 2? Same thing with the 926C. And by the way, that's an A1 exemption. And in my video, I'm very clear about the fact that I have always claimed a 4615 A5 exemption, not an A1 exemption. An A1 exemption is for active duty law enforcement. Let me just make that clear.
To define what qualifies as a special investigator. Now, if we take a look at that article, it lays out some very specific.
See, now he's going into something that has absolutely nothing to do with me, has absolutely nothing to do with me as a senior counterintelligence special agent.
Roles within the federal government that the firearms exemptions from 4615 apply to. Now, I'm not going to read all of these, but spoiler alert, a counterintelligence agent with the DOD is not on the list.
Spoiler alert, I've never claimed an exemption under A1.
Closest thing that would even be questionably applicable from this code would be a special agent of the Criminal Investigations Command of the United States Army. But it is highly unlikely that this would apply to CJ.
It does not apply to CJ, which is why I've never claimed an A1 exemption, because I'm not a CID agent. I'm a CI agent. There's a difference. CID agents handle normal criminal activity. CI agents handle national security crimes. Big difference. There's a reason for that. That's why I don't claim an A1 exemption.
Okay, and here's why. So for those of you who don't know, there is an entirely different set of codes and laws that apply to members of the military. This is known as the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and it's essentially the military's own private judicial system. It only applies to the people who are in the military, but it operates just like any other legal framework, with a few slight differences. The UCMJ is what gives military officials like the military police the authority to apprehend and arrest other members of the military. But like I said, this legal framework only applies to members of the military. And it's entirely possible to be a law enforcement officer within the military that has no authority to arrest anyone outside of the military.
That makes absolutely no sense. Did you hear what he just said? It's entirely possible for you to be a law enforcement officer within the military and have absolutely no arrest authority. Now, in the military, of course, because of the Posse Comitatus Act, our authority in the military only applies on military installations, of course, if there's war in certain areas, or if the person is in the public but is subject to military jurisdiction. We can't go, an MP can't go from Fort Hood into Killeen and start writing traffic tickets, but on civilians. But if a civilian is on Fort Hood, he can write a traffic ticket for that civilian on Fort Hood because he's on federal grounds. The same with CI. We'll get to that in a little bit. But nobody in military law enforcement has authority outside of the military to make arrests. But that has nothing to do with anything. Has nothing to do with 926C, has nothing to do with what makes a person a law enforcement official. People, just like in the state of Texas, if you are a county deputy, a sheriff's deputy, or a city police officer, if you are a Temple police officer, you can't go to Oklahoma and effect arrests. Just like an Oklahoma trooper can't go to New York and start making arrests. It's called authority, and you don't have it. Your authority, if you're a Temple police officer, is generally within the city of Temple. If you're in Bell County, it's within the county of Bell. If you're a Texas trooper, It's within the state of Texas. Okay. I mean, anyway.
This is an important distinction because it is also entirely possible for a military officer to have the authority to arrest both civilians and military members.
But that's not true. Only on a military installation, or in a military operation in which there is control over the civilian populace. Again, like if there was some sort of declaration made and military are given that permission to do that. But nobody in the military, he says it's entirely possible. No, it's not possible unless that civilian is attacking a military base, or a military operation or military personnel. That's the only time that we can go outside of essentially our little jurisdiction and make an arrest. It's got to be directed against the army. There's this thing called subversion and espionage directed against the army. If it's not directed against the army, we have no authority. No one in law enforcement in the military has authority over civilians unless those civilians are targeting the military.
Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, there are a bunch of different agencies that exist within each branch of the military, and not all of them are granted the authority to arrest citizens. Typically, in order to be granted that authority, you have to be a member of a special criminal division of the military. So in the Army, for example, they have the Criminal Investigations Division. In the Navy, they have the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. And then there's also the Office of Special Investigations in the Air Force.
Now, here's what's interesting about all these. The Army's a little bit different than the Air Force and the Navy, and by extension, the Marine Corps. The Navy has what's called NCIS, and NCIS handles the duties of both criminal investigations and counterintelligence. So they're mixed and under one umbrella. In the Air Force, it's the same way in the Office of Special Investigations. You're cross-trained on both criminal investigations and counterintelligence investigations. In the Army, we have two separate paths, and those paths are CID and CI. Generally, in the Army, your MPs, your military police officers, that's the feeder for CID. In the counterintelligence world, almost anything can be a feeder. You can transfer over it, but you have to be a sergeant in order to become a counterintelligence agent, because of the duties and the responsibility that is involved in what we do. And generally, the feeder for that is the 35 mic or the interrogator sort of field. It's somewhere in the 35 series field. But the Army has two separate investigative arms. You've got CID and you've got CI, whereas OSI, which is the Air Force, and NCIS, which is the Navy and Marine Corps, they combine those missions. So he doesn't seem to understand that. And he thinks that because they're separated, that only CID, because you notice what he's missing here. He talks about Criminal Investigations Division Command, right? But he doesn't talk about Counterintelligence Operations Command, which is a whole nother command like CID. There's CID and there's CIC. He doesn't understand that. When you're going to talk about military stuff and you're going to tell a military guy, especially one who's retired from that field, that he's wrong, probably just do your homework first.
And I think you get the point. These are typically the only divisions of the military that can carry any actual law enforcement authority outside of the military. And counterintelligence agents generally only have the authority to arrest under the UCMJ.
That's false. The UCMJ gives the authority to counterintelligence agents to arrest. It also gives authority to CID to arrest. It also gives the authority of MP to arrest. Oh, and by the way, in certain situations, it also gives commissioned officers, warrant officers, petty officers, and commissioned officers limited abilities to effect arrest to quell things like quarrels, frays, and disorders. So even as an NCO, the UCMJ gives us limited arrest, of very limited, not to the point of being qualified law enforcement, but it's really just to maintain order and discipline among the troops. And really, you just detain them and then you call the MPs if there's something criminal going on. Otherwise, it's mostly an administrative detention. But the UCMJ doesn't, It's not like the UCMJ is the only authority that counterintelligence has. I mean, if you didn't have the UCMJ, none of those would have the authority. And as a matter of fact, I've got this pulled up. I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can present both of these here. Let me share. Nope, that's not working. Let me try share a screen, maybe. Here we go. Here it is right here. Allow. All right. This is actually from the UCMJ. Now, the UCMJ, this is Article 807. Under the UCMJ, I know this is a very long, it's the US Code, 10 US Code 807, but this is where the UCMJ gets its authority, and this is what talks about apprehension authority. Apprehension is the taking of a person into custody. Any person authorized under regulations governing the armed forces to apprehend suspects may do so if they've reasonable belief, blah, blah, blah. And this is what I was talking about here, where there's very limited authority for non-law enforcement people also. But that doesn't mean necessarily arrest authority. This is just the definition of apprehension. And I'll get into more of the other stuff.
Where it also goes back to the federal code that CJ mentioned, 18 U.S. Code 926, which is part of the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act that was passed in 2004.
And again, this drives me nuts. It's not 18 USC 926. It's 18 USC 926C. 926C. All right.
This act allows qualified current and retired law enforcement officers to carry concealed firearms nationwide, regardless of the state law, with a few exceptions like federal buildings and private property. And
that's not true either. It allows us to carry in every state subject to state laws. And every state is different about where you can and can't carry. If there's a state law that says even if you're retired law enforcement, you can't carry here, there, or otherwise. The only thing that the LEOSA does is it allows retired law enforcement officers to carry in every state essentially on their person. But if the state has a law that says, for example, you can't carry into a convenience store that sells alcohol, even if you're retired law enforcement, guess what? Even with a 926C card, you can't carry into a convenience store that sells alcohol. It's subject to federal or to state laws. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but he's wrong that says you can carry anywhere. No, 926C requires that those who carry, not only does it have to be concealed, it only applies to concealed carry. So I can't just go to a state and open carry, especially if open carry is not legal. I'm only protected under if I'm concealed carrying, but it's always subject to state laws.
Section 2C of the code that CJ is citing, it clearly states that the firearm exemption only applies to individuals who held statutory powers of arrest.
All right. Now, actually, hang on. I'm gonna let him continue here for a second, but I'm gonna get into that.
Statutory powers of arrest basically means that you can arrest citizens along with military members.
No, that's not what statutory powers means. Statutory powers of arrest means that you have the power to effect an arrest. Now, I showed you what apprehension was. That's different, and arrest is a legal term. Nowhere in 926C does the statutory power of arrest mean that you have to also have the authority to arrest citizens. Otherwise, CID wouldn't have that authority, and neither would the MPs. Okay, so he's wrong there as well. Statutory powers just means that is there a statute that says you can arrest somebody? And if you can effect an arrest for a violation of a crime, then you fall under 926C. So he's wrong there as well.
And that's typically not a status that is granted to counterintelligence agents. Now
he's wrong there. Okay, so he just said, here's the first thing I want to get back to. I'm gonna pull this up again.
With military members. And that's typically not a status that is granted to counterintelligence agents.
All right, now I'm gonna get to that right now. Now we're gonna move. And he just said that counterintelligence agents do not have statutory powers of arrest. All right, so let's go ahead and add. Let's stop this screen here. Stop screen. Let me add another one. Share screen. Go down. And let's go to this. All right, allow. Here we go. This is Army Regulation 381-1. 20. Army Regulation 381-20 is the Army's counterintelligence program. This is what this is essentially the policies and procedures manual for Army counterintelligence agents. Okay, it's the regulation statute that tells us kind of what we can do here. Now I'm gonna pick this up here and make it a little bit bigger to make it easier for y'all to see. And you know what? I'm going to turn off these comments so that you can see a little bit more of the screen, I think. Whoops, that's not working. Hang on. What did I do? I guess that didn't work, did it? It's still not showing the... Nope. Dang it. I thought that would show the full screen, so I guess I'll turn those back on. All right. Well, we'll just do it this way. So if you look, these are the investigations that are under Army counterintelligence jurisdiction. And if you read this CI investigative jurisdiction is derived from national DoD and Army policy that defines the types of incidents and personnel that are subject to investigation by Army CI components. What are those? Army CI jurisdiction includes the following. This is what I investigated. This is what I did for a living. Treason, espionage, spying, subversion, sedition, FIS-directed sabotage, FIS being foreign intelligence services, terrorist activities, assassinations, and other things, okay? So here's the investigation. This is our investigative authority. That's what it says under Chapter 4. This is our jurisdiction. Now, let me go down here to Chapter 8 and explain this to you as well. Under Chapter 8, if we keep going down here, oh, what's this down here? Chapter 8-12, pursuant to 10 USC 807, 809, 28 USC 535, rules for court martial 302, AR, which is Army Regulation 600-40, CI agents are authorized to apprehend any person subject to the UCMJ, regardless of location, if there's a reasonable belief that the person has committed a criminal offense under the United States Army Intelligence Investigative Jurisdiction. They are also authorized to conduct investigative stops. Interesting. Go down to B. CI agents are authorized to detain civilian personnel on military installations or facilities when it's reasonable that they've committed a criminal offense against the U.S. Army. There you go. Even if we met his definition, which is not required, that we are able to arrest military and civilians, even right here in our own regulation, it says right there that we have that authority to make arrests, to effect arrests. Search and seizure authority, we have that as well. Involvement in civil legal proceedings, blah, 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 blah. Okay? That is the regulation that applies to Army counterintelligence special agents. So right then and there, again, he's wrong. He's just 100% wrong. I just showed you the actual law that says that Army counterintelligence agents have authority to effect an arrest. He just said that doesn't exist.
It's entirely possible that CJ obtained statutory arrest powers through some other means, like...
I don't need some other means. As a counterintelligence special agent who's got a badge and credentials, that's my means. That's my authority. I don't need anything else.
Like working in a civil law enforcement capacity before or after his military service. But if he's hinging his argument on his counterintelligence credentials, I don't see that holding up in court under Texas law or federal law. Now,
really? Because I just quoted federal law. I just quoted the federal laws that apply to the arrest powers of counterintelligence agents. All he had to do was a simple search. Hell, if you just type in Army counterintelligence, I guarantee you the regulation probably would have popped up, and all he had to do was read it. And then in that regulation, it identifies what parts of the United States Code gives us arrest authority, also what parts of the United States Code and the Uniform Code of Military Justice gives us investigative authority over. So, I mean, it's not even, this isn't even basic. He didn't even do his basic homework about what is a counterintelligence agent.
again, CJ might hold some arrest powers that we're not aware of, but
how can you not be aware of it? You said at the beginning of this video, and I told you all at the beginning of this video, that he even admitted that I'm a senior counterintelligence special agent. Once he admitted that, if he'd have done his homework about what is a senior counterintelligence special agent, and a senior counterintelligence agent is just an E7 or above, a sergeant first class or above in the Army, he would have realized that. So he has no idea what he's talking about. He's completely ignorant about it. He's trying to make with half-assed statutes that he's not even presenting in whole, is trying to convince his people that he knows better about a counterintelligence agent than a counterintelligence agent, that he knows better about a retired federal law enforcement officer than a retired federal law enforcement officer, that he knows better about Texas gun laws than an attorney who specializes in Texas gun laws.
But that is not the claim that he appears to be making in this video.
It's in my left back pocket.
Bear County had to learn the hard way. Bear County, they had to learn the hard way. I saw the video. I saw it.
Would you like to make him here so you can identify law enforcement?
Okay.
We're gonna do this publicly.
Let's step back here.
CJ claims that the deputies took him to a secluded room and told him that he could return to the meeting if he agreed to disarm himself, but of course, CJ refused. The deputies informed him that he was being detained until they could investigate the situation and connect with the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, which is otherwise known as TCOL. Apparently, TCOL told the deputies that CJ wasn't a legitimate law enforcement officer, but according to CJ, after some pushback, they realized they were wrong and released him. In his follow-up live stream, CJ makes a few more legal assertions that I think should be addressed.
Yeah, let's address those. All right, so we've already established he has no idea what arrest authority is. He has no idea what a counterintelligence agent does. He has no idea what federal laws apply to a counterintelligence agent. And let me also just say this. You know, there's a reason that this is sort of a niche thing, because most people in counterintelligence aren't they're not public figures. We generally, there's a reason that we have the moniker spooks, because we're the guys that hide in the shadows. We're the guys that are recruiting spies and trying to find spies. It's the spy versus spy. Everything's in the shadows, and we don't really bring a lot of attention to ourselves. But I don't ever talk about what I did as a counterintelligence agent. And quite frankly, the fact that people know that I'm a counterintelligence agent actually opens me up to being targeted by foreign intelligence services. And so that's why a lot of us don't talk about it. I'm not worried about that, because I don't talk about what I do. I don't talk about what I did, except in very broad terms. I worked in counterterrorism. For the first 5 years, I worked mostly kind of counter narcotics is what I did, which is why I hate the drug war now, because I've seen it firsthand and the destructive nature of it. And so I just don't talk about where I've been other than my combat deployments, because I don't want to invite that kind of stuff. But I'm also more public than your average spook. So that's why this is such a weird thing, because most people don't know who a counterintelligence agent is. All right.
I'll just play the clip here so you can see what he claims from his own live stream.
And of course, my argument was I used my 4615 exemption as a retired law enforcement with the proper credentials.
Onto West 7th Street.
But regardless of me having credentials, anybody can carry in there because they don't have signage up under.
Now, I will tell you, there is one thing I'm wrong about, but he misses it. He doesn't understand, and so he doesn't catch what I am wrong about here. And I'm gonna rewind this real quick. I'm gonna do the full sort of statement that I make here, and then I'm gonna tell you where I was wrong, but he's not going to catch where I'm actually wrong. He's gonna bring up the parts where I'm right and say that I'm wrong.
My 4615 exemption as a retired law enforcement
In 300
with the
feet,
proper
turn
credentials.
left onto West 7th Street.
But regardless of me having credentials, anybody can carry in there because they don't have signage up under what they're supposed to have under 30.6 and 7 to post to keep guns out. They have a little no gun sign, but that's not what they're required to have. They're required to have 30.6, 30.7, 30.5 signs. So they didn't even have it properly posted for anybody could have carried in there legally.
So
Okay, so before he gets into it, let me tell you what the truth is here. If you have a license to carry, you can carry in there legally. Okay, they can't put up the signs. If you have a license to carry. If you do not have a license to carry, and you're carrying under the constitutional carry law, You cannot carry into an open meeting under Texas law. You have to have a license to carry in there. They don't even have to post a sign, okay? But even if they posted the signage, that's really just to notify those people and let them know that, hey, this is about to be an open meeting, because they can carry into that meeting up until the point that it's called into effect. So the minute they say, we're now this is now an open meeting as of 6 p.m. We're going into open session. Okay. Once that gavel hits, if you do not have a license, you cannot carry in there. And generally a 30.5 sign will tell them that, because as soon as the meeting's over, now you can carry in there into that room, because it's not an open meeting and it's very specific to open meetings. So that's where I was wrong, at least in the way that I explained it. But I wanted to sort of explain it a little bit better on what the law is. Okay, let me say this one more time, and I'm going to show you what he's not going to show you. If you do not have a license, you are carrying because you have a constitutional Second Amendment right under Texas law, not the Constitution. Under Texas law, you cannot carry into an open meeting. Okay, and that's just the law. If you have an LTC, you can. There you go.
Claims again that Penal Code 4615 makes him exempt, and like I said before, unless he has obtained some type of statutory arrest power somehow, then the exemption wouldn't apply to him. But then he goes on to say that federal law enforcement officers...
Okay, so he completely skipped it. He says, unless I've somehow gotten some sort of statutory arrest power, we've already addressed that I'm wrong here. All right, so let me go ahead and share this page to you and show you where, once again, he didn't do even simple homework. I'm going to show you, this is 4615. Let me make this a little bit bigger for y'all. Let's see, how can I do that for you? Is it this one? Nope, hang on. There we go. Make that a little bit bigger for you. Hopefully you can read that. Now, first thing I want to show you is 4603, because this is where you cannot carry a gun. Okay, under 4603A, there's a long list of places that you're not allowed to carry a gun. Okay, and they're all 1 through 12. Now, if you go down to 14, 14 is the one that we're talking about here. Under 4603A14, you can't carry a gun if you don't have a license. Well, actually, I take it back. And I'm going to get to 4615. You can't carry a gun into a room or rooms where a meeting of a government entity is held if the meeting is an open meeting subject to Chapter 551, which is the Open Meetings Act. Okay, so just remember this: 4603A14. That's the statute. That's the statute that I was claiming, that I was talking about, that I have a license, I'm able to carry into there. Now we go down to 4615, which he was just talking about, and says that I'm wrong, that there's no statutory authority. So let's go down to 4615. Oh, I think I passed it. Non-applicability. All right. So you see here, this is 4615 non-applicability. Who does it apply to? You remember him, he says that, he was talking about 4615A1, and he kept mentioning that I'm using this exemption as a special investigator. No, I'm not using this exemption as a special investigator, because this whole section applies to active law enforcement. Okay, active law enforcement. Now, down here, this is the exemption I've always claimed, which is 5, an honorably retired peace officer. I'm going to get back to that, because he tries to denounce that as well. So I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But keep going down here. Now we're down on number 11. We're down on... where is it? Right here. Okay. B. So remember, there was A14, which... I'm sorry, A5, which says retired. Now we're in section B. Subsections 4602, 46A14, and 4601. So this is what's important right here, because remember, 4603A14 is the Open Meetings Act, right? That's the one that I just said that you can't carry into an open meeting as long as it's been provided notice. This right here says that 46 4603A14, an open meeting does not apply to a person who, and then it gives you a bunch of different things here. And one of those, a person who is carrying a license issued under subchapter H, chapter 411 government code to carry a handgun. In other words, the LTC. And a handgun in a concealed manner or in a holster if openly carried. So if you have an LTC, you fall under the B6 exemption, which is you have an LTC. So I fell under 2 exemptions. You notice he missed that. He completely skipped over the fact that he's talking about 4615. He keeps talking about A1. He doesn't read all the other sections that are down there. He talks about A5 briefly, I think in a little bit coming up. But when I'm talking about anyone can carry in there if they have an LTC, anyone can carry into an open meeting because it does not apply if you have a license to carry. Why? Because people with a license to carry are the most law-abiding people in Texas. They're even more law-abiding, 6 times more law-abiding than the law enforcement community. How did he miss this? How did the legal scholar of Audit the Audit miss exactly what I was talking about as he's going through and quoting 4615? This is the penal code. There's no interpretation necessary. It's very clear. It does not apply to, let's go back up here. I don't know that there's some sort of special language here. Sections 4615 or 4603 A14 do, that's an operative word, but not means it does not apply to a person. So it wouldn't apply to dogs. It applies to a person who, now we skip down to 6, is carrying a license to carry, which is what this whole thing is. If you have a license to carry, you can carry into an open meeting. So not only do I have a license to carry and I'm able to carry into a public meeting and they couldn't have stopped me, but I also have my law enforcement officer credentials. Okay, so there you go. There's yet another thing that John gets wrong in his video. And I tried to ask him to just get with me. Let me give you the right law so you can give your people correct information so you don't look like a fool later when I make this video. And he didn't care. He wanted me to make this video. He didn't want to do the right thing. Let's go back to John.
Do not have to meet Texas standards for firearm prohibitions in Texas. As he has obtained some type of...
They have a little no gun sign, but that's not what they're required to have. They're required to have 30-6, 30-7, 30-5 signs. So they didn't even have it properly posted for anybody could have carried in there legally.
So he claims again that Penal Code 4615 makes him...
And again, anybody with a license, that's what I neglected to say during that. Of course, I'm driving. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I'm talking and I'm driving and I'm thinking. So the only thing that I messed up there on, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on, except that he still completely misses it. He still completely misses it because I'm obviously talking about the license is if you're licensed to carry.
Exempt, and like I said before, unless he has obtained some type of statutory arrest power somehow, then the exemption wouldn't apply to him.
The exemption would apply to me because B6 has nothing to do with arrest authority. It has to do with having a license to carry.
Yeah. But then he goes on to say that federal law enforcement officers do not have to meet Texas standards for firearm prohibitions in Texas. But let's go back to Code 4615 and look at what is the only section of the code that he could possibly make a legitimate argument for being entitled to, which is subsection A5.
Now, he's mentioning A5, which I've already mentioned to you, and that's always been the section that I claim. I've always, in all my videos, you hear me talking about 4615A5, 4615A5, okay? He's going to quote this, and he's still going to be wrong.
Subsection allows an honorably retired police officer or other
No, it's honorably retired peace officer.
Qualified retired law enforcement officer to be exempt from firearm regulation.
Now, you see what he missed there? And let me go back to this for you because he missed a very important a very important part of this. I'm going to play it one more time and then I'm going to show you where he's once again misleading people by not providing all of the information, okay? Here it is.
Subsection A5. This subsection allows an honorably retired police officer or other qualified retired law enforcement officer to be exempt from firearm regulations.
Now, see, you know what he said there? He just completely skipped over probably the most important part that would have helped him in his argument, that would have helped him to know what he's talking about. When you look at 4615, and here it is again, he quoted this right here. This is what he read. An honorably retired, well, he said police, but it says peace officer or other qualified law enforcement officer. This is what he missed. As defined by 18 United States Code 926C. Notice he didn't say that part, because that would have been the part that directly related to what I've been talking about. So,
but there's one problem here. Not only are retired officers required to have statutory arrest authority under the federal law, but they also have to hold a certificate of proficiency under Section 1701357, which is issued through TCOL. Look, I've looked at this from every angle I could, because
apparently not. Apparently, he missed a whole lot of angles.
Honestly, I like the idea of an attorney who is also a former federal agent standing up to corrupt officials in a small town. But based on my interpretation of the relevant laws,
you don't even have to interpret it. It's in plain English here. Yes.
I don't think he's actually right about this one. I don't think that CJ actually had the lawful authority to carry a firearm beyond what the average Texas citizen does.
Did I not show you all? I showed you all the Army Regulation 381-20. I showed you the 10 U.S. Code 807. Now, let's keep going.
And in his live stream, CJ also says that the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court isn't displaying lawful signs on their buildings because they don't meet the standards set forth in Penal Codes 3005, 3006, and 3007. But again, this just seems like a misrepresentation of the law, because the signage requirements in those codes only apply to private property.
It's false. If you read 411 and 229, excuse me, 229.001, as well as various other statutes that talk about there are certain places that have to post signage. And it's also government property that can post signage, but only if it's under the code. It's got to be under 4603. If it's under 4603, they can post the signage. Now, they don't have to, but they can. Like I said, if there's going to be an open meeting, it's a good idea to post the 30.5 sign, because generally that building is not off limits, where open meetings of city councils and county commissioners courts, those are not off limits buildings. So once the room or rooms, that's what the law specifically says under 4603A14, once the room or room becomes used for an open meeting, then it's only good idea to inform people. Thank you. Thanks. Hey, let me do this real quick because I'm coughing a lot lately. It's a good idea to inform people that, hey, there's an open meeting in here now, and if you don't have a license to carry, you can't carry in here. And that's what the 30.5 sign does. It gives that notice to people that an open meeting is happening.
Not government property.
It does include government property.
Government meetings, like the one that was taking place at the Commissioner's Court, are explicitly designated as gun-free zones under subsection A14 of Penal Code 4603. So there are no sign requirements for a building like the Commissioner's Court, because the building is already inherently a firearms prohibited area by law.
See, and that's actually wrong too, because he just said that the building is a prohibited place. If you remember and you go back, 4603A14, which he just highlighted there. Okay, he just highlighted it himself. Let's go back to this where he highlights it.
So there are no sign required property, not government property. Government meetings, like the one that was taking place at the Commissioner's Court, are explicitly designated as gun-free zones under
Now, I mean, right there, if you read it yourself, it says the room or rooms where an open meeting is being held, a government meeting is being held that's subject to the Open Meetings Act, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't say building. It's the room. So that entire building is perfectly legal to carry into, but when there's an open meeting, if wherever the city council chambers are, wherever the county commissioner's court meeting is, wherever the school board meeting is being held, that room becomes off limits if you don't have a license, which I've already showed you. Additionally, if there's an overflow room, because the main room is full and there's an overflow room, well, that room, that's why it says room or rooms, that room also becomes a prohibited place unless you have a license, because as I've shown you under 4615B6, if you have a license, 4603A14 does not apply. All right, let's get back to this.
Subsection A14 of Penal Code 4603.
Just right there, room
so
or
there
room?
are no sign requirements for a building like the Commissioner's Court because the building is already inherently a firearms prohibited area by law. Now
again, it said nowhere in there the word building.
Again, I just want to make it abundantly clear.
I want to make it abundantly clear. It's a room or rooms. Those words are incredibly clear. A room does not mean a building unless the room is the building. You walk into the building and there's one room. That's the only time a building would be off limits, and it wouldn't be off limits unless there was actually an open meeting. So 10 minutes before the meeting, you can walk in there. 10 minutes after, actually 10 seconds after the meeting, you can walk in there.
That it is entirely possible that CJ somehow acquired the statutory authority to make arrests through some unknown source, which would in fact grant him the firearms exemption. But again, that's not the claim that I'm disputing here. The point that I'm trying to make is that being a counterintelligence special agent in the Army does not grant law enforcement authority beyond the military. And that appears to be the argument that CJ is attempting to make.
So this idea, and I think he goes into MATA after that.
All right, now let's not forget about Manuel Mata.
Okay, so now he goes into Manuel MATA, so we're going to remove that. Now, let's put a final nail in John's coffin here. And I'm going to show you some things. Let me share my, let's see, maybe I can just share this whole. I'm going to see if I can share the entire Mozilla. That doesn't look like I'm going to be able to. So let me show you this here. Which one do I want to do first? I've already shown you that. I've already shown you that. I've already shown you that. Oh, here we go. Let's do this. You remember, here we go. I'm going to show you this next. And I can go ahead and remove him from here, remove from the studio, share screen. Let's go over here to, why is it doing that? See, it's not sharing what I want it to share. Is this it? Oh, there we go. Okay, it's just titled something differently. All right, this is the 926C, okay? This is 18 USC 926C, and then under 926C, you can go to subsection C, which says, what is a qualified law enforcement officer? And there are several things here. So separated from service in good standing, I've got that. I've got a D-214, I've got an honorable discharge. As a law enforcement officer, I was a 35 Lima, actually a 35 Yankee, because once you become a senior counterintelligence agent, you go from a 35 Lima to a 35 Yankee. And then before separation, was authorized by law to engage in or supervise the prevention, detection, investigation, or prosecution of, or the incarceration of any person subject to 807. You remember I showed you 807, which was the statutory authority under the UCMJ. I've already showed you that Article 7B. It's Article 7B of the UCMJ, but it's 10 USC 807B is what the US code is, and then it's incorporated into the UCMJ as Article 7B. So I meet that. I've already shown you that under 381-20, the Army Counterintelligence Program, that we have both the prevention, detection, investigation, and prosecution of any violation of law. Now, obviously, we have specific violations of law that we go into. So I meet this one. I've already shown that to you because here it is. This is the, like I said, this is 807, 10 USC 807. And again, it's 7B, Article 7B in the code of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I brought to you already the Chapter 4, the investigative jurisdiction, which going back to 926C, investigation. I talked about in here how we do the prosecution down under Chapter 8, of the code where it says what our apprehension authority is and making arrests, searches and seizures, and all of that kind of stuff. So that meets this section 2. Then you go to 3. And then before such separation, served for an aggregate of 10 years or more. I served for 21 years. I actually did 16 years in counterintelligence. And then separated from such, I didn't have any probationary period, so I'm good there. And then during the 12-month period has met at the expense of the individual the standards for qualification in firearms for active law enforcement officers as determined by the former agency of the individual, the state in which the individual resides, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that just means that every year, not only do I have to meet the requirements of being a retired law enforcement officer, but I also have to every 12 years or every 12 months get qualified. And then under 5 and 6 and all that, those are just the prohibiting things. I can't be a felon. I can't be an alcoholic. I can't be addicted to drugs. I can't be prohibited from possessing a firearm. I can't have any family domestic violence convictions, anything like that. That's what the rest of that stands for. But really, I've got to have this is what a qualified law enforcement officer is, and then the 12 months, right? So we've gone over all of this. Now, let me show you something else, because the Army, this is where it still would have been so easy had John just done his simple homework. And everybody can go here and look at this, because if you just do a simple Google search with "are counterintelligence agents qualified law enforcement officers under LEOSA," right? This probably would have come up, because this is what I have to go through. This is the process that I go through in order to get my LEOSA. And it's called LEOSA Army, leosaarmy.com. If you go to the facts page and you scroll down a bit, there's a section called Topic General Questions. And you know what is weird here? There's actually a question right here. There's a question down here that even someone like John could have probably figured out an answer to. Are U.S. Army counterintelligence agents authorized to receive LEOSA credentials? Well, let's just click on that and see. Oh my gosh, yes. The following credential, 35 Lima, which I told you about, which is what I was, 351 Lima, or 350 or 35 Echo. So these are the, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, these are the warrant officers, and then these are the officers. In these particular MOSs, for the purposes of this directive, and there you go, soldiers in the 31 series, which is MPs. This is MPs. Who meet all the other requirements of 926 BC will be considered authorized to carry by the Army to carry a firearm. We carried handguns. While these individuals are considered to be authorized by the Army to carry a firearm, this does not amend already established law and policy, including procedures, blah, 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 governing the process of when and how these people can be armed. Okay? So, very simple question here. Are U.S. Army counterintelligence CI agents authorized to receive those credentials? The first word, yes. I mean, all you got to do is go to leosaarmy.com and he would have found the answer right then and there. He didn't have to go through the mental gymnastics of reading through all of those laws. You can go and Google all this stuff yourself. There's also, did I open these? I don't know that oh, here we go. There's also, you can open this up, look up Army Directive 2021.06, which is the implementation of LEOSA. This is the directive that implements LEOSA, and it tracks essentially with the statute. So those are all of the separate laws. Now, here's what is the icing on the cake, okay? Because you guys see how during the video, I'm showing Driscoll something, right? I'm showing him something. Well, CJ, what are you showing him? Let me show you what it is that I'm showing him. Whoops, wrong one. This right here is my qualification card, my 926C card. All right. Obviously, I'm not going to let you see my address. The issue date here, 22, indefinite. So it doesn't expire until I expire, essentially. Type retired. Now, what does this up here say? Qualified DOD law enforcement officer. Very clear. Again, I could have shown this to John had he asked me about it. Could have shown it to him. Would have been very easy. Whoops. Would have been very simple to do. Oh shoot. Well, there you go. I don't know why that did that. There it is. Gonna have to edit that out. And then here is my TCOL annual qualification right here. My TCOL annual qualification. Every February, I go and I qualify, and this is what meets the second, where it talks about during the 12-month period, I must have a, I must be qualified. The Army allows you to qualify with any law enforcement agency in the state where you reside, because you can't really go, the Army doesn't allow you to use their ammunition and their ranges for that purpose. So they allow you to do it. But remember, if you looked at the 4615 A5, it said a qualified law enforcement officer under the authority of 1701. What does it say right down here? Issue authority, chapter 1701, Texas Occupations Code. Retired officer, firearms proficiency. Valid only when shown with those retired credentials that I just showed you. I don't care. I have guns. So with these two documents, this is what proves that I am a 926C qualified law enforcement officer. It's all of the statutes there are met. All John had to do was ask. And what just happened is I just audited the audit, audit the audit, and made very clear that he's just plain wrong. It has nothing to do with interpretation. Okay, it's not that he read the same thing that I read and it means something different. We're not debating what the definition of is. It's very plain language. It says room or room. He says building. That's an ignorant interpretation if that's your interpretation. So I didn't want to make this video. Literally, I just left a comment. He responded to it. I just said, hey, you might want to contact me so that you can issue a correction before I do a video. And he's like, oh, yeah, go ahead and do the video. Because you know what? He wants this fight because it gets him clicks. I personally don't care. I've got better things to do. I'm representing people on First and Second Amendment cases where the government is violating our rights. I've got better things to do. It's a Friday night. I'd rather be with my wife right now. And instead, because John wouldn't do the right thing and simply contact me. I mean, literally, I just said contact me. Just contact me and you can make another video. Hell, you probably get even more clicks if you would have said, hey, I spoke with CJ and he provided me some good information. And, you know, there were some things I was wrong about. And here's where I was wrong. You know, and he could have done a great thing and shown his audience that he was fully transparent on everything and was willing to listen to somebody who he's saying is dead wrong, who I don't have any statutory authority. He doesn't even know what those words mean because I just showed you all of the statutory authority. So, guys, take care. That's what I wanted to bring you. It's not a 16-minute video. This isn't going to get all the clicks and everything. But if you're going to call yourself Audit the Audit and you're going to come after me, first of all, just contact me. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to anybody. If you have a question about something I've done or not done, I'm very easy to find. I've got my own website. I've got plenty of websites. ISueBadCops.com, ISueTyrants.com, CJGrisham.com. I mean, it's not hard to find me. It's very easy to find me. Help me understand why the Second Amendment is always ignored by lawyers. Because it's just not sexy, I think, unless you really care. There's not a lot of money in it. There's not a lot of money in fighting Second Amendment cases because unless it's something that's clearly established, and see, that's the problem. If you don't fight it, you're never going to get clearly established law. That's why I'm here to fight it. But the simple answer to this question right here, help me understand why the Second Amendment is always ignored by lawyers. And by the way, thank you for that $5. Is because there's just not money in fighting First and Second Amendment cases. There just isn't. And I don't do this for money. I do this for liberty. I didn't become an attorney because I wanted to get rich. I became an attorney because I want to get free. That's what I want. I want freedom. I want you to be free. I want my friends to be free. I want my family to grow up and be free. I want to leave this world better and this country better than I had it. And that's why I do this. That's why I defend the First and Second Amendment. Here's the odd thing is, even though I don't charge a lot, if anything, most of the time, because of the fact that I win so many times and I'm able to get cases overturned very quickly. As a matter of fact, today, folks, ladies and gentlemen, today I got a case dismissed where my client was charged with having a short-barreled rifle when really it's just an AR pistol. And we were sitting here fighting, and they're like, "Oh, but the ATF said," I'm like, "Well, the ATF is wrong." And so I contacted the ATF. I contacted the prosecutor, and I explained to them that, look, this whole thing is, if the ATF doesn't know how to identify or define what this weapon is, how can you expect the average citizen to do it? Because the ATF didn't even know what was going on. They were trying to figure everything out. Finally, I sent the ATF a bunch of information today, and I says, look, get your hands on this gun. Don't take SAPD's word for it. Put your hands on the gun and you will see it's not what SAPD says it is. And sure enough, today I got the notice that my client's case was dismissed and the judge signed the dismissal. So I am now still to this day on a 100% success rate for Second Amendment cases that I've taken. Now, my First Amendment cases, I'm starting to my percentages, thanks to Smith County, are dropping a little bit because of Smith County, but it's that's a more nuanced. The First Amendment's a little bit more nuanced than the Second Amendment is, because of all the other stupid laws they have about interference and disorderly conduct and all that kind of stuff. But I still have a really high. I've only lost 3 cases on First Amendment grounds, but I will tell you that every single one of those is under appeal. So that's the good news, and I believe that we're really going to win on appeal on those First Amendment cases. All right. Thank you for the $2 as well. 2A seems to make a lot of your analysis moot. I agree. The problem is, look, here's the problem. We all know what the Second Amendment says. It says shall not be infringed. That means that every law is an aberration to the Constitution that relates to firearms, that restricts access to firearms or possession of firearms. The only lawful Second Amendment laws related to guns are how guns can be used. For example, it's not protected under the Second Amendment to murder somebody with a gun. It's not protected under the Second Amendment to harm somebody with a firearm. It is not protected under the Second Amendment to threaten someone unless you're being threatened with a firearm. In other words, self-defense. Those are the only laws that are not an aberration to the Second Amendment. Everything else that has to do with just possession, that has to do with just purchasing, that has to do with ownership, that has to do with transfer, none of that stuff is lawful. The only thing that's lawful is the use of a firearm in order to commit a crime and in order to violate the rights of someone else. So there you go. You guys take care, be safe, be free, and I will see you guys next time. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.